welcome to A Seat at the Table. And I'm just so thankful today. We're going to be talking about a very special subject, kids today. And we're going to run a series over the next few weeks with some special guests. And today, it's my honor and our privilege today to have Garen Stanley, the next gen pastor. I guess that would be your title, maybe, or youth pastor, student pastor, whatever the proper term is, at the great POA there in Alexandria, Louisiana. And we've become friends over the past few years and just try to help each other any way we can navigate these students. And so, man, thanks for jumping on here today.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's an honor. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. Well, we'll dive kind of right into this, and what prompted this. It's a total different day and age of just how we lead students, teach students, get them to where they need to go, and trying to help parents and lead parents through the process of how disconnected they are from one generation to the other. And so it's been about 3 weeks ago, I was doing our high school class on a Wednesday night, and we broke out into this discussion of how different they think they are from their parents and what the difference is between their parents and them. And so in that discussion, I thought, man, like, this is their perception. I don't know that necessarily it's reality, but it's their perception of what things are like. And I know you guys are just you're doing a great job there, but you had experience in middle school too. Could you kind of talk of just firsthand experience of just like over the years? I don't know how long you've been involved in youth ministry, but just for me, it seems to change every year, but it's really changed over the past probably 5 years, of just what's the difference between these students today and some of the kids that graduated 5 years ago and moved into college age.
Yeah, so we started in middle school and we did 9 years bivocational with middle school, which is probably my favorite group
Yeah,
because
cool.
everything you do is cool.
Yeah,
You don't have, like with high school, you got to really try.
yeah, oh yeah.
But with middle school, you can, throw pizza at their face and it's awesome. You
They're
can do
just glad to
anything.
not be in kids' church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like everything's cool. And then we've been over high school for the past 4 years. I've been full-time youth pastor over junior high school, and then our college or hyphen
That's awesome.
for the past 4 years. So probably I would just say I think the question is probably the most important thing, is always asking, staying curious about what is actually changing. Um, because of the fact you stated that it is changing,
Sure.
and if you're not asking the question what's different today, you can get stale really quick. I mean, really quick. And I think that's probably the most important thing, is asking, what do I need to adjust? Are you curious about what they're thinking about? My thought would be their access to information is probably so much higher.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, in my opinion, probably in the last 2 years, with the rise of podcasting becoming so big, there's been
Yeah.
a lot of mainstream people who
Sure.
have brought on apologetics and stuff like that. So I've actually seen a huge influx of people interested in the Bible.
Yeah.
And there is that level of uh, clarity and reality teaching of the Bible, because you have a lot of that now that's being mainstream. I mean, Jordan Peterson, he said
Sure.
one of his biggest audiences is middle schoolers.
Which
You
is
know,
incredible. Yeah.
and so I would probably argue they're more interested today
Sure.
in biblical theology than they were 5 years ago. They just have a higher access to that information. So I think as leaders and speakers, you have to do a more diligent job of
Absolutely.
speaking biblical truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They kind of hold you accountable to to some extent. Not that we haven't in the past. I'm not throwing shade at, like youth pastors years ago, but
Yeah.
it's like, they do in some sense, you're competing with a whole lot more in the sense of like, man, I
Yeah.
heard this guy online today, or I heard this, nugget of, this spliced part of, a sermon that was just like, this is powerful and it spoke to me and it impacted me. It's like, I'm just hoping that something I say impacts you as much as this person that you watch today. So I think that's incredible. It's like you have like they're digital natives. Like I think that's the word that's used a lot. And then your parents, they've just adopted it. So like they're trying to figure it out,
Yeah.
So um I was telling a guy this week, he was asking me like, hey, how do you stay relevant? How do you, he's just asking all the questions. He's a new youth pastor. And I'm like, man, you gotta talk to your kids.
Yeah.
You can't sit from the outside like looking in and just hope you hit it. Like so it's relational driven, I think, is a big thing. And there's always that gap, like when you talk to parents like, hey, how are you connecting with them? And I'm not. I'm like, I'm just asking them like their opinion. I'm not just giving them mine, like,
Yeah.
and I really just more listen than I do talk. And it's like I don't know what's trending and I don't know what's relevant. I mean, I've got a 5-year-old I'm chasing around or whatever, you know how it is. And so
Yeah.
it's like you're trying to lead them and guide them through this path of life. And it's like you don't ever talk to them about where they're at and what's going
Yeah.
on. Um, I think that's a huge part of it. Like that's what you're saying is like having a relationship, listening to them, knowing, hey, this is so then I'm going to try to relate, and from a teaching standpoint or series, I don't want to just be doing it because it's what I'm reading this month or I saw this like I've got this cool theological idea or philosophy, and it's like, is this relevant to them, and I
Yeah.
think that's um I'll tell you this. I made a list and they didn't really even know. I was just listening to them have these conversations and we were going around the room. And it was funny because I got, a group of high school boys. You never hear them say a word,
Yeah.
you got to pry it out of them. And so when we started on this topic, man, they are all piping up, just like giving their thoughts. And so I jotted a few of these down and I think this is crazy, which obviously their first thing out of their mouth was technology. Like that's, my parents don't understand it. They don't get it. Like they don't. And so they said, this is a great point too. And you might kind of speak to this. They said that issues last longer. Like
Hmm.
their parents just expect something to be like, this happened and it's over.
Hmm.
And he said like, this one guy was basically saying like now it's in like a text feed, it's posted, it's here, it's there, it's all over the place. And so he's like, it just lasts. And all of a sudden, if you're not careful, like you may be turned into a meme that shows back up 15 minutes, 15 days from now and start trending or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. So I think navigating all of that has probably created a little bit of the stuff that we're dealing with. I think we hear like mental health and all those types of things a ton. But I think it's because probably some of that stuff lasts longer in the sense that it's more a talking point. Maybe they're more open to it
Hmm.
than open to discussing it and being more um, comfortable in those type of. That's just one example of like you hear a lot of this, but maybe it wasn't. It's not that it's more than it used to be. It's that it's talked about more. You know,
Yeah.
Um, and that's like kind of what you're saying from a relativity, like being relevant to them and being trying to connect with them, like just listening to them, having a conversation with them. I think that's huge, And like you said, a middle schooler is getting it like for the first time, but I think that high schooler probably on their way out, and you can kind of speak to this probably a little bit more than I can. I've never been like just middle school. And so I've always had like either high school adultish or had them all, like I'm
Yeah.
overseeing middle school. But it's like those middle schoolers struggle with like this identity, like coming in, they're going through like all the changes and all the things are happening in their life and they're trying to figure out who they are. I think they're going through it in one sense as a 12, 13-year-old, 11-year-old boy, whatever the case may be. But then the seniors that are about to graduate are going through it in the same way,
Yeah.
but just it's different, right? But it's a whole identity shift again, where they're trying to figure out, who they are, um, and they have these. Obviously, all the milestones of their life have seemed to be like delayed. Everything's kind of pushed down the road. Whereas parents are like, we want these faster transitions. Like when
Yeah.
I was a kid, I wanted this, I wanted that, I wanted that. Like we're gonna fly through these things. I'm gonna grow up fast. And so I don't know if you've seen any of that, but that's like the top things that I'm kind of hearing is like we're overly exposed, like we have all this information, but then in the same sense, we're just like inundated with thoughts and ideas and how do we process these things. And so, um, it's so interesting. They said, that they're safer, but they struggle more in their self-esteem. Um, they've lowered their standards because they've seen more. Like literally, they're talking about like the norm is a
Mhm.
lower standard
Yeah.
because we see way more, and so therefore naturally they lower the standard for their life because they see people doing way worse than they are, I guess. And I'm like thinking, well, what about the people doing way better than
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just so interesting to see their perspective. But I don't get any of that if I don't just open up a conversation and let them just kind of pour all that out.
Yeah. I think the difference between middle school and high school is
Hmm.
middle school is motivated by a sense of belonging, like they want to belong
Yeah,
to a group. They want to feel like they have a place.
yeah,
But high school was motivated by freedom.
I can
They
see
can't
that.
wait to get their driver's license. They want to be free. They want to do their own thing. So if you try to use shame, guilt, uh, any of those things, they're gonna basically respond out of rebellion. You're gonna feel a wall come up because you're not speaking to something that motivates them. And especially as a youth pastor, like students are gonna do what they want to do.
Sure,
So you have to try to take that and motivate them by something spiritually that
yeah,
does actually push them in the direction because, Paul spoke a lot about like you have liberty, you have freedom. So if I'm trying to speak to a high schooler, that's the direction I'm going to be trying to go is because
sure,
that's what naturally they're motivated by. They want to be
makes sense.
free. They want to be able to make their own choices and do their own thing. But for a middle schooler, I'm going to try to make them feel like they belong to a pack, like they belong to a group and they
Yeah,
can find their sense of identity within that.
and that's great.
So I would say probably leading today, I think you have to have a higher level of grace
Hmm.
than you did 5 years ago, 10 years ago,
Yeah,
uh, because that grace is the space for people to be able to grow. And I would agree with you. There has been some developmental delays
sure.
because of social media and their awareness and openness to everything that has delayed some of that. So I think if
Hmm.
you don't adjust your grace giving,
Sure.
you can go into youth ministry super frustrated,
Yeah,
especially trying to last as long being in youth ministry for a long time. You end up comparing one
absolutely.
generation to the next, which
Yep.
isn't really fair.
No,
They all have their levels of challenges and their pros and cons. But with that, you just have to understand this is a challenge that they're facing. And I think you said in the beginning, like even though it may not be a truth you accept, it's the truth they see. And
sure.
that's what they're narrating their life by. So you
Absolutely.
can either get super frustrated, like, I don't get it. They're crazy. They need help. But,
Yeah,
or you can say, hey, I got to give them grace and lead into that, in a
sure.
way. I try to tell our staff, um, I think the one big thing that's probably shifted is they're not looking for a sage on a stage anymore. They're looking
Mm.
for a guide to walk by their side.
Wow.
Whereas a sage on a stage is going to preach at them,
Sure.
but a guide is going to walk through life circumstances and challenges. And, leading does include preaching, but
Yeah.
preaching alone is not leading.
No,
So I think you have to, real leading
absolutely.
walks alongside, happens at gravesides,
Man, that's
bedsides,
powerful. Yeah,
that kind of thing. That's real leadership. And I think there's a level of authenticity that this generation is seeking
sure.
because, like you said at the beginning, they have access to way better preachers than me. They can listen to anybody they want
Bro,
on any
absolutely.
on any outlet they want, and they're doing a far better job preaching than I am. I'm going to do the best I can, but when it comes to the relational ability and the wisdom of God that He can give me in the moment, while walking through a divorce with them, walking through a family member going through cancer, somebody on YouTube can't do that, but I can. And I feel like that's the level of ministry that they need today rather than 5, 10 years ago. They
Yeah.
didn't need that in the same capacity today. They need more grace today, in my opinion. Um,
And that's so good. And it's like we can sit here and that's when, most of the things, and people ask a lot like, hey, what are you reading? How do you know? Like I'll recommend this book, and I don't know if it's the best way to show this off, but this is just one. It's and she does a great job. It's Jean Twenge, I guess is how you pronounce her name. I don't know if that's correct or not, but Generations. And it's like, it tells you a lot. Like it's overwhelming. I mean, you can see how big this thing is. It's like, it's a massive
oh
read,
wow.
and it's like just navigating. It's like all these statistics that are just highlighting boom, 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 boom. This is the difference between this one. This is the difference between this one. It's like, so you got these parents and this age of leaders trying to lead this group of kids. And it's like, and so am I going to sit here and speaking to like what you're saying with grace, like leading with grace? Because grace is not just like understanding and loving and giving that space, but it's also a teacher. Paul
Hmm.
said grace is a teacher that is going to, because teaching is not just like me giving you my opinion, like this is what you should do, but it's like I understand where you're at and I'm going to track you to get you to where we want you to be. And it's not looking at where you're at as being like this bad place or even where I want you to be, that it's like where I was. It's like, it's no different than me trying to relive my glory days or relive like what I think I should have been or what I want my kids to be. It's the same thing of like, that's not how we get anywhere, productive with the next
Yeah.
generation. It's like, I can sit here and tell you, only 60% of 16-year-olds have their driver's license. That's kind of stuff she's like throwing at you, whereas in the 90s, 80% of them did. Well, I mean, is that the most terrible thing in the world? Because, I know some 25-year-olds that are paying out of the wazoo for insurance because they had their driver's license, breaking all the laws there
Yeah.
were at 17. So it's like, that's not like something that I want to get up and beat them over the head about. Like,
Yeah.
get your driver's license. Like, so I can get up, and I've been guilty of it sometimes. It's like you read these, you know, just astronomical differences between statistically generations. And so I'm sitting here, I'm like, you gotta want to be this, you gotta want to be that. And it's like, even over the past 2 or 3 years, I realized, hey, this isn't working.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to admit that because you want it to be this, you want it to be that, but having grace with them, understanding what are the main things,
Hmm.
what's the when they graduate or when they move from, young adults to married or whatever, like what's the main things we want them, like, yeah, they need to, they need to move some milestones up. Are they launching late? Yes, yes, yes. Do we want to mature them? But what is my job as a leader,
Hmm.
as a youth pastor in this role, but even as a parent, as whatever, like when I see them transition into adulthood, I want them to know how to pray. That don't really have anything to do with them driving a car or
Yeah.
not, right? I,
Right.
I want them to know, the foundational stones of like, doctrine and
Yeah.
what the Bible says about them, what the Bible says about salvation. Like, I think a lot of times we get so caught up in just how different they are that we miss the whole leading opportunity because it's
Yeah.
like we want them to be like it. Well, they're not going to be like us, and that's um, I think that's a huge thing. So when you said leading, with um, leading with grace is such a huge way to put it, that be guiding them and being with them and having the conversations is going to last way longer. I mean, there's probably, you know, I tell people all the time there was coaches in my life that made such an impact because I spent so much time with them, and it was like a one-on-one conversation of like, hey, you got to deal with this, you got to deal with that. You can't bring that on the field, you can't bring that on the court, or you can't do this. You can't. And those like individual moments made such a big deal of them guiding me. And thankfully, I look back over it and they were huge impact on my life. They weren't, and not again, I hate the idea of tearing one thing down to build another thing up. So it's like, hey, they can both be good, but like there was moments where I had good Christian coaches and morally good people that poured into me that had just as much of an impact as a youth congress moment
Yeah.
where, this power and I know that's crazy to compare, but it's like these are 1, 2, 3 times a year,
Yeah.
whereas this is stuff that's going to happen every day. So leading them, pouring into them and allowing them to grow every day that's what does it for me. It's almost frustrating sometimes you get in those gatherings where there's like thousands of people and you like what happens when they go back to the grassroots?
Hmm.
Like how many of these people are going to make it? Because I want to see I want to see the fruit. I want to see it like happen. Like you watered that and it's like
Yeah.
which is again, that's a whole nother thing that's just different, from generation to generation. It's like I sometimes talk to kids about like you're trying to read the Bible, like planting seeds and like planting what? Like we just go by that, right? We don't. So it's that's one of those things where even relating to them sometimes is you have to just remember where they're at. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I
one
think,
thing that's down here, I want to kind of get your thoughts on is this is a whole youth pastor conversation, but my college age kids do not want to mix with my high school. So like when I want to have a large group event, like they like or vice versa, middle school wants to be with high school, but high
yes,
school
they,
like if they're coming, I'm probably not coming. Like you
yeah.
got those few kids that are just like I'm gonna help them or whatever, but most of the kids are not. And so it's like they said on here it's like a smaller groups. They have a lower like they feel like compared to their parents, they have a lower like lower
Social
trust
stamina. Yeah.
like socially, their social standard of like the big crowd, like that whole, like
Yeah.
it's way lower. And so I don't know if you've experienced any of that, like where you're at, or with your students. Maybe I just have a bunch of really immature ones sometimes, but it's like, hey, let's all come together and do this thing. And I'm like, no, like, well, would you have individuals like breakouts or split up events and everybody's there having a good time, but it's like their circles seem to be a little bit smaller,
Hmm.
you know. Um, so I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit of experience, or if you have any guidance on that. So
Yeah, so we have three groups. So we have junior high, high school, and college, and we have they're typically split into
yeah,
separate rooms, but one night a month. So the
okay,
first Wednesday night of the month, the way our structure is we call it refuge night, and
yeah,
so everybody is together one Wednesday a month, and that's whenever I'll launch a series, kind of casting vision for where we're going for that month.
yeah,
And then the other 3 weeks of the month, they're in their individual classes and they're teaching. We're all teaching the same thing,
gotcha,
but in a relatable way to the
makes
appropriate
sense.
age group. Um, the way we definitely have the same issue. You have our college students, not all of them, but you have a large portion of them. They're like, I've already passed that stage in my life. I'm not,
Yeah,
looking for that. But I think the way we've tried to address that is kind of putting the purpose of why we're doing it in front of them, because that's something that our college students actually buy into.
makes sense.
If you can give them a reason, for me, growing up in the time I did, I love the huge crowd, and
Oh
I
yeah,
like to be loud and I want it to be full. It's like
yeah,
everybody's jumping. Like that's just, to me, that's what I like. But for them, like you
yeah,
said, they're actually kind of in a different stage. So if I can kind of put to them, and the leaders are constantly bringing up to them like, hey, you're viewed as a leader. And at first it didn't really seem to catch, but repeatedly, and I'll pull them to do certain things, or I'll have them come and speak in high school to do, like, to kind of give them some more
yeah,
buy-in. Um, and once I see that start getting traction, the rest of them typically follow suit, to where they understand that that Wednesday night really isn't about you. It's
perfect.
about
Yeah,
trying to develop, because there's nothing to me more powerful than a sixth grader or a seventh grader looking over and seeing a 21-year-old,
Absolutely.
lifting their hands or praying over people, because they can create a culture that I, as the leader, can't, because
Absolutely.
they are closer. But to
Mhm.
me, I view it more of a leadership opportunity for them and ministry development, and it gives them an outlet. So, I charge them like, hey, if you see a middle schooler, go pray for them. If you see a high
Yeah,
schooler, go pray for them, and it kind of, it bridges that gap. I think you're always going to have a little bit of struggle,
sure.
but for the most part, if you just view it through the eyes of this is a ministry opportunity, and the other 3 weeks are about you.
Yeah,
We're gonna teach you about finances. We're gonna teach you about how to
sure.
make good life decisions, through college. We're gonna teach you how to move through life. But this night, one night, I just need you to give me your attention and really focus on ministering to the people in the room. And so then at that point, you kind of engage a ton more youth staff
Yeah.
members.
That's awesome. No, that's perfect. And that's similar to what we do. It's just like, again, it's one of those perfect examples where like, if it's up to me, I'm like, let's all get in one room and let's just rock, like let's have a good time. Let's have a move with God. Let's have fun. Um, but I've said it a million times, but it's like, it doesn't matter what age you are, you got to have a purpose, right? And
Mm-hmm.
purpose, I guess as a leader, we're always trying to get that purpose bigger than their problems type thing. So
Yeah.
it's like you get them. There's got to be a facet of no matter what age they are that they look at and they buy into helping someone else, pouring into someone else, and so that's perfect. I think how you describe that. That's a perfect layout of just allowing them to experience both in a balance of they need to be fed, they need to be strengthened, and
Yeah.
you give them guidance, but in the same sense they are able to buy into the whole group, and it's not just about me. That
Yeah.
one big service a month. Um, it's just I think one thing we do this. You're full time. I'm blessed to be full time, and we have the school. We have a couple other factors that not everybody has, and everybody's situation is different. But I have a lot of parents that ask questions that just they're so puzzled by this generation, and it's one of those things where I think there are a lot of parents that kind of tune in and check it out. So like from a parenting standpoint, just dealing with parents, what's some of the things that you've run into that maybe you see parents do really well, or maybe you see parents that are like super reliant on the youth group. Let's put it that way. Like I feel like with some kids you feel like you're raising them, and then some kids you're like they obviously have a parent that's getting it, like they understand it, like they're not trying to form them into the 1990 mold or whatever the case may be in their mind, like that they're um like I totally get it, like there's things in every generation that aren't great, like I obviously have a little book that I wrote on about social media, and all that stemmed from conversation with kids, and we did a series on it. It was not a thing where I'm like sitting here just like coming up with this. I mean, most every chapter was a student. It was a counseling session. It was a
Yeah.
parent. Like it was a, and so just from experience, like speaking to parents that are out there today that are struggling with their 16-year-old boy who's being rebellious, but not being rebellious like they were rebellious. It's like this whole like I'm not. I think I had talked to a dad the other day, and he's like, "Man, I don't know if you can get him to tell you anything or talk to you, but like I can't get him to open up about anything. I can't get him to open up about girls or sport, like the normal things that we just kind of joke about or whatever." He's like, he's just so it's like it's not this like rebellious, like he's respectful, he's kind, he's yes sir, like he's like the ultimate, not getting in trouble, but he's just not opening up. And it's like, man, this is just like a lot of these students they're just kind of silent, something, you know what I'm saying, like they kind of go through this season where they're not taking risk, they're just kind of in their own world, they're trying to figure it out. And so, I just tried to guide parents into prompting questions, prompting, thought. This is the thought process of like just be a ear, because it's like, but I don't know. Again, I can kind of go on and on about like you'll overtalk
Yeah.
the parents are just like, hey, just listen to them, know where they're at before you just start pouring in all the solutions. Because I'm sure you have great solutions, but they're also not living where you lived.
Yeah.
Just speaking to parents specifically, is there some things that you've seen some parents do well, and maybe even some things you've seen parents not do so?
I think it's probably a healthy proximity.
Yeah,
You want to stay close enough to be influential,
yeah,
but at the same time, what I've seen a lot of parents struggle with is when a guy's turning 15, 16, he's gonna separate from his parents,
yeah,
um, and what you don't want to do, in my opinion, as a parent, is try to grab back on.
sure, absolutely,
There is that space that they're, even though I would agree, like we talked about in the beginning, they're delayed,
hmm,
but they are still, it's a God order for them
absolutely,
to start trying to find their sense of identity apart from their parents,
hmm,
not in a way of rejecting their parents completely, though at times it can probably feel that way, because you
sure,
got to realize they've never done this before.
no,
This is new to them. And
yeah,
then the grace to the parent is it's new to you too.
sure,
So you got to understand they're trying to figure it out. So if they're quiet, they're probably thinking,
yeah,
and so let them have the space to think, process, and trust. One, you want to stay in proximity to where, hey, like you said, you're an ear, you're available. But when you start trying to force information on them and they're not asking it, it just causes them to want to push further away rather than just to have a safe distance to where they can kind of start figuring out, like, okay, who am I? I'm
yes,
16, I'm 17. I got to start figuring some stuff out because they
sure,
still feel that social pressure around them to start leveling up.
yeah,
And so when we're talking to our parents, I'm like, you don't want to be a helicopter parent. You just
no,
don't want to be that. And it's kind of a joke because then the parents who are helicopter parents know they're helicopter
oh
parents.
yeah,
That
like
they
I'm
know,
that
and
person, like
yeah,
don't be,
they're like don't, like, I know, I'm a helicopter parent. I'm like, okay, so that's great that you know it, but your child is going to respect you when you let them have a little bit of space. I'm not talking about letting them do things that are immoral and all
sure,
that. I'm just talking
yeah,
about a healthy space to where
hmm,
you got to understand they're trying to figure it all out. And so as a parent, you've got to be able to trust the process
absolutely,
and say, hey, you know, it's a team effort. I'm not
hmm,
putting all of the responsibility on the youth pastor and the youth group to
sure,
be able to parent my child, but there's enough layers around my child.
right,
One, I'm praying for them daily. I'm in proximity to them. They know I'm available. I know they're locked in at their church to the best we can. And so there's layers around my child, and I'm
hmm,
just going to safely, to the best of my ability, guide them into a place, and they're kind of walking at their own pace. They're not, we're not controlling our kids,
sure,
because that's
yeah,
going to breed rebellion.
absolutely,
We're giving them space to be able to learn and grow, and unfortunately make mistakes.
yeah,
That's the part that parents don't like, is their kids are gonna make mistakes. So,
absolutely,
and that's okay. I mean, they're gonna make mistakes. We made mistakes growing up. They made
absolutely,
mistakes growing up, and
yeah,
so it's not the end of the world when they fall. For me, it's like those are God moments for us to
absolutely,
be able to come alongside a
hmm,
guide by their side and say, hey, you know, what do you feel like you did wrong?
sure,
What can we learn from this? I hate you're going through that. I hate this is what you're feeling right now. What
hmm,
can we do to prevent this in the future? There's
yeah,
so many teaching opportunities that we miss if we just hover right over the top of them,
oh yeah,
because then they're going to be delayed in adulthood because,
uh,
they were never
exactly.
having ability to learn.
I think that is one of the trends. Is like their parents are so exposed to all the things in the world today, and so there's a lot of them. The way they lead's driven by fear. I don't want that to happen
That's
to my kid.
huge.
I don't want their, and before, like the only thing you'd see is like a face on a milk carton. You know what I'm saying? It's like somebody's missing. Well, I don't know, but like today it's like you're getting inundated with just content that's promoting like this happened to this kid, this happened to
Hmm.
this person, this happened, and the awareness of it is so high that you lead, and I think it's one of those things where I've heard it referenced, like it's not even helicopter moms. It's like, or dads for that matter. I see both, but it's like they call it lawnmower parenting, where they just mow them over. I'll
Yeah.
just do it for you.
Yeah.
I'll take you wherever. I'll drive you wherever. You don't have to do
Hmm.
it. They're taking them to their first day of college.
Yeah.
It's not their first day of middle school or something. Like they're
Yeah.
just doing it for them, and it's like they're just showered with unsolicited advice. They're in the middle of their dating relationships. I'm like, I'm looking at them sometimes like, are you dating him or her mom, like, or his dad or like his mom? Like, I
Yeah.
was like, that you're in a relationship with the parents more than you are the kids. And so, like, what you're saying, I think is so perfect. Like, be close enough that you're there. You have, but you gotta let them experience something. You
Yeah.
gotta let them fall, skin their knees, so to say. And I think it's Proverbs said it's good for a man to bear the yoke in his youth.
Hmm.
And I think too many times we've got students that are 23 that's never felt any pressure.
Yeah.
They've never felt any problems, never felt any issues. And so to feel that weight, I think um, we don't realize it but by not allowing them to physically or emotionally or spiritually feel that weight of responsibility. You've already said it, but like taking that hyphen or college age kids and putting them down there and letting them feel the weight of
Hmm.
what these kids are going through and speaking to them and pouring into them. Something as simple as that is helping them more than we even realize.
Yeah.
Like just making them feel the pressure and the responsibility of, hey, I need you to take care of this, I need you to take care of that. And it's like, it's no different than I've referenced it a few times. Just like I've got a 9-year-old, he's got a list of chores. It's much easier for me to just do it. Like
Yeah.
if he takes the trash out, it's going to make more of a mess
Yeah.
than it is. But what good, like I'm not teaching him anything
Yeah.
by allowing him to, just not do nothing, just sit there and not be responsible for anything. So, it's small things that we nowadays are in such a fast paced world where, there's so much fear and there's so those two things, really work against the whole, train up a child in the way he should go. And all the things that we've seen work for generations. It's like, man, my dad would just leave me over something until I figured it out, and he was there. Like you said, I think the proximity thing where I know he's there to help me,
Hmm.
there's this sense of like, I want to accomplish this. I want to, I want to climb this mountain, so to say, and it's like, there's kids that are turning 21 and 22 and thinking about getting married and they've never had to climb anything for
Yeah.
themselves. They've just been carried everywhere.
Yeah.
And um, it's a hard thing because I think that it really has to go back to the idea of you just being overly exposed and
Hmm.
worried that your kid's going to mess up like so and so or fall
Yeah.
into this or be taken advantage of or whatever the case may be. And so,
Yeah.
man, I think that's such a great way of just the way you worded it there, but just be close enough that they trust you, they know you're there, but you got to be able to let them live, and
Yeah.
um, mess up. And I think that's even, I mean, it's even as young as 12, 13, 14. I mean, this is a thing where I think kids are getting so old and their parents are still involved, heavily involved with their life. One thing we're trying to start, and this is kind of new for us, I just stole it from another church, but it's like having a conversation with our seniors throughout the summer. We're going to have a conversation with them about, hey, you're 18 now, you're an adult, you're, now a part of this church. If I have an issue with you, I'm coming to you. I'm not coming to mom and dad. You know what I'm saying? But like, just
Yeah.
these are
That's
the
awesome.
responsibilities of, being a member of this church, being a part of this church. These are the things that we expect. These are things that we can do for you. These are things that, like, it just transitions in their mind from them being a kid to them being, it's just a whole responsibility shift.
Yeah.
of just like, hey, these are the things that are available to you. These are the things that we expect of you. These are the things that you can expect of us.
Yeah.
These are the things that you can expect of leaders and the opportunities that are before you. And it shifts from that thing because I'm finding myself where it's like I'm in a meeting or having a conversation or dealing with a problem. And it's like, this guy's 23 and his
Yeah.
parents are sitting in the room,
Yeah.
and it's like, it's just a thing where just trying to do it in both senses as parents, but also as leaders, just making sure that we allow them to become what God wants them to. And I think
Yeah.
we are too overly involved too many times.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's it's definitely a interesting process of
It
navigating
is.
that. But um, one last thing I do think that there's a gap between Gen Z and the teens that are parents are just it's this phase that we're probably fighting more than anything because we're really not too far removed from, I guess I graduated in 2007. That was the year of the iPhone. And so I didn't grow up with it, but
Yeah.
we're not too far away from like, I'm looking at my brother-in-law, Nolan has a child, and she's just turned 1. Well, he grew up most of his life with technology, with a form of social media throughout his teenage years and those type of things. So we're getting to a place to where there are going to be parents who are starting to parent teenagers and young adults. So I do think it's a phase where the whole social media thing has been somewhat of I don't know if it's the word excuse is the right thing. It's been hard to navigate. It's new. There's a lot of change, but um, it's a very, tech driven world that we live in. And the more parents are aware and understand it and how keeping your kids accountable nowadays, a lot of it is on phones, and that
Hmm.
sort of thing. So the last thing I'll throw at you, what are some of the things that you think from a tech type social media, since our kids are living in it, what's some of the things that, I don't know how much you all address it or deal with it or get involved with it, but from a parent or a leader standpoint, what's some of the guidelines within social media that because we see this too, like parents are overly involved. They're in there commenting on their kids' stuff and like it just gets awkward, but then in the same sense, you've got like an 11-year-old trying to follow you and, it's like, just navigating it as leaders and what's the line, how much are you involved and how accountable. It's like some people they see their just to preface this, kind of what I'm gearing at is like I see some students and some parents are like, hey, like that's their own world, we're going to stay out of it, right? That's their social life, that's their relationships, like I'm not going to be involved in that, and you shouldn't either, you know what I'm saying? Like you shouldn't be worried about what's on their phone, or you shouldn't be worried about. I think there's like that extreme, which is wrong, right, in my opinion. And then the other side of that is you're overly just like you can't have nothing, can't do anything, and that's the world they live in, right? Have you had any fun experiences with any of that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So probably we view it more of like a broad approach. For me, I teach the principles,
Sure.
uh, because like you said, social media is always changing.
Mm,
Everybody's has had some sort of access to it. And so for me, I think as a leader, if I'm always trying to chase down
mm.
the latest thing, for me, it becomes a distraction,
Yeah,
you
I can see
know,
that.
and so it's easier for me to teach principles. It's easier for me to teach the the way of
Sure.
this is a Christian lifestyle.
Hmm.
This is the way I please God. It applies to every area of my life, not just there. I don't believe in your social media
Sure.
being separate from your personal,
And that's going to work in every season, right?
yeah. And I think for us, that's the way I've tried to approach it. Obviously we speak on social media, but for me, I'm trying to push towards this is a principle of life, not just your phone. This is in your relationships. This is
Yeah.
this is in your integrity. This is in your
Sure.
character. This is every part of your life. Being a Christian isn't a category.
Yeah. No,
It's a sum total. It affects every part of me.
that's so good.
And so I think if you're wise, you've got to try to stop categorizing
Yeah.
pieces of
Mm,
that,
mhm.
because in my experience, if you preach on social media, they compartmentalize in their brain of he's just talking about this part,
Yeah.
and it's human nature, so we try to like compartmentalize naturally,
Sure.
but the way Jesus told us to live was this is every part of me.
Everything.
If you're following me, take up your cross and
That's
deny your whole
whole.
self, like all of it,
Yeah.
and just follow me. So I think following the principles of Christian disciplines really invades
Wow.
all areas and avenues of my life rather than just my social media, just my school life, just my home life, just my
Yeah.
dating, it's everything. I'm
Yeah.
either a Christian in every area,
Right.
or I'm not really.
Yeah.
I'm in process. So obviously I think people struggle,
Sure.
but there should be that conviction of to bring Jesus into every piece of me, not just like, okay, I'm gonna delete this app,
Delete this app. Fixes
for
everything.
for
Yeah.
6 weeks, and then like, so I think there's avenues of that, with our staff, and maybe you may not be asking this, so if
No,
it's
I
not,
am.
just
No,
if I'm
yeah,
sidetracking, just
you're good.
but I try to tell our staff, that Jesus delegated authority. He didn't delegate a task,
That's perfect.
and so, uh, if you're like so task driven,
Mm,
you kind of miss where Jesus is like, go, I want you to go into all the world.
yeah.
And he didn't give them specifics. He didn't like lay out line by line, this is exactly what I want you to do. He
Yeah.
discipled them for 3 years, and he trusted whatever method, however they were going to do it, they had the principles developed within their life that they were going to do it in a way that the end result was the same. And so
Wow.
for me, that's the way I try to do it is, I could preach on social media for every week, you
Sure.
know,
Yeah.
but at the end of it, I'm going to miss the heart of it. I'm not against social media because I'm on it. I'm for
Sure.
the principles.
Hmm.
I want you to live a Christian life because of the freedom it gives you. I want you to
Absolutely.
live a Christian life because of the blessing it gives you. I want you to go to heaven, you know. So
Exactly.
eventually, I think there needs to be that focus, like how you said in the beginning. We've got to learn to shift away from, because social media doesn't have that new factor anymore,
Yeah.
but principles never fade.
Absolutely.
This
Yeah.
is
So true.
the way that a Christian lives. So that's the way we try to approach it. I don't know if that answered your question or
No, it
not.
does. That's perfect. That's what I was gearing toward. Is just like, man, you can't just say, rid of it. Like you can't I mean, and in the same sense, you can be guilty of just like you said, I'm just going to get up and harp on it, harp on it, harp on it. It's going to be in every message, but it's no different than like we said, like what are the main things we want them to leave with that are going to take them through every season? I'm always going to be big on prayer, but like these are the principles. This is but it's like the Holy Ghost. I mean,
Yeah.
or, the Spirit of God inside of us. We got to have it, right? He said that's what's going to quicken our bodies. I mean, that's what's going to get us out of here. I mean, technically, we could get up and every time we speak, it could be, you better have the Spirit of God inside of you.
Yeah.
Talk about the Spirit of God, the evidence of the Spirit of God, speaking in tongues and the fruit of the Spirit and all these. Like, we could get up and every time it be like a thing. But ultimately, like you said, that what's the principles? Like,
Hmm.
how do I know I have the Spirit of God?
Hmm.
How do I keep that stirred up in my life? It's going to take the word of God. If I don't keep the word of God hit in my heart, I'm not going to, sin against him. Like all of these things where it's, like you said, I think the principles, it's just like anything else. Social media is a factor, just like holiness or
Hmm.
righteousness or like any of the things down the list. You can mingle it in your conversations, being that person who, that's like the thing you talk about all the time.
Yeah.
I think they can just kind of, like you said, they'll if they're not careful, they'll put it in this category
Hmm.
where like this is a part of my life, and it's not. It's all everything you're
Yeah.
doing. Um, I gotta have the Holy Ghost,
Yeah.
and I gotta have the Spirit of God, like leading me, guiding me. I gotta have the Word of God. I gotta have all
Hmm.
these, principles that if that's happening in your life, it doesn't matter if it's a real interaction or it's a conversation online. And I mean, I go back to that all the time. I'm like, hey, if you're having problems with your kid, rebellious, lying, cheating, like they can't trust them, they're just going through a season, you don't need them in text groups
Yeah.
treating people the way that they're treating them. Like it's just magnified, right,
Mm-hmm.
online to some extent because it's not in person.
Yeah.
We know we'll say stuff in a text feed that we would never say. That happens all the time. So
Yeah.
it's like, man, if you're having problems with this, like let's go to the line and let's get these principles right. In order to get those principles right, we're probably going to have to involve the social media, cell
Mm-hmm.
phone, digital world because
Yeah.
that's where they live. So, taking a step back from that, taking a step back from, you know, who's on their call log and tightening down that phone might be a part of
Right.
that kid's maturity because they can ruin a lot of their life in the sense of
Absolutely.
who they're characterized as and what people and man, but I think what you're saying there is just it's very it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, hey, we're gonna base everything off principles that are gonna go with them through seasons. There's a new app today. If you're just chasing down the app list, and we do like
Yeah.
in a sense because of the school, we have an app
Right.
list,
Yeah.
but it's also one of those things where like, man, that thing's updated yearly. I'm not changing it every week because we had an issue with so and
Yeah.
so, and everybody's struggle. This kid's struggle's not everybody's struggle.
Right.
And you mentioned the cross, and I think that's the depiction of who we are as Christians. We take up our
Mm-hmm.
cross, and my cross may may need to have some deleted apps.
Mm-hmm.
Your cross may not. And
Yeah.
so if we're not careful, we just have the one problem that we deal with in, the youth group, and all of a sudden we just make it a blanket covering for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's like the bottom line is that cross, it has to be built to kill me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When they
That's
when
good.
they structured the cross for Jesus, it was built for whatever size and height and
Yeah.
weight
That
he
he was.
was. And
Yeah.
so it's like some of us have a really small cross that we will never die on.
Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
reality of we got it hanging around our neck, we got it tattooed on our arm, we got it
Yeah.
somewhere. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
it's a connection piece of suffering, but it's never going to kill us.
Yeah.
It's never going to crucify our flesh. And so I try to make it as like with parents, it's like, don't compare yourself to those kids. Don't compare yourself to those parents. You got a totally different kid
Yeah.
who's got totally different issues.
Yeah.
He may not be able to have an iPhone just because Johnny does. He may need a flip phone.
Yeah.
And so the principles are there to say, hey, take up your cross. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you're as unique as you are in your gifting, you're that unique in your struggles.
Oh yeah. For sure.
And so training me, I think it's so interesting that that's the word used when it comes to kids.
Yeah.
It's not raising them.
Yeah.
We're not just raising a herd of cattle. We're not just throwing
Yeah.
out there like, right. It's train them. If I'm going to train, if you're going to train me in the gym, it's going to be different training you in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I've got different issues. I'm going to have problems with my knees. I'm going to have problems with, I'm going to gain weight here. I'm going to eat
Yeah.
bad or whatever, but you're going to train all these
Yeah.
kids differently. And it relates perfectly to a cross. It's
Yeah.
like, it's specific in the sense of how we discipline them, structure them, lead them. Is it, it's just it is a craft. And I think we're always having to be careful to work on it. But man, some of the stuff you're talking about is so powerful and so applicable to where we're at. I mean, you've helped me today, so I really appreciate you
Well, I was glad to
jumping
be
on
able to
here,
be
and I
on.
hope for the listeners we've helped somewhat bridge the gap, right? So it's a relationship no matter what. And so I've often said that the bridge has got to be strong enough of relationship to carry the truth that has to cross it.
It's
And I
really
think
good.
that's the thing. It doesn't matter if I'm trying to win my neighbor. I'm building a bridge
Yeah.
that one day I can share love and truth and
Mm-hmm.
everything that God is that they may not see right now. It's the same thing with my kids. I want that bridge to be as strong as anything else in their lives so that when I do have to correct or teach or give grace or speak truth in love, whatever the case may be, whatever the day holds, that the bridge of relationships there, that they can hear it.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think we have a lot of distracted parents in a fast-paced world. We've got a lot of distracted leaders. They, like you said, they get hyper-focused on one thing and they miss the main thing.
Yeah.
And that's that they know we love them and they're going to go through seasons where they mess up and they know we're here for them type thing. But man, thanks so
Yeah,
much for jumping
absolutely.
on
This is a
here, and
learn.
I know we could talk about this all day, and maybe we'll do a part 2 and jump on another subject. But just thanks so much for
Yeah,
being a part.
it
And
was awesome, Zach. Thank you.
oh man, you guys are killing it there as always. And I hope you guys that are watching just check out everything that's happening there at POA. But if you would like and share and subscribe to our new podcast we're trying out here, and let us know if there's any topics you want us to cover. But thank you for watching, and Garen, thanks for being on here, man.
Absolutely. Thanks.